Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Community Relations Group Conversation for Tuesday, July 20th. I'm Christina Hupy, a Senior Education Program Manager here on the team, and we are excited to connect with all of you today. Please feel free to put any questions that you have in the document, and the slide deck is linked there as well. And we'll work through the agenda. So Sid, you have the first question. Would you like to verbalize?
Yeah, thanks. I see the code contributors, and the last time I dove into that number, 3,800 on slide 3, it included people that had submitted code, but that wasn't merged. So which one is this? Does it include those people or not?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for catching that. That's my miss. It includes people that with unmerged MRs. There is a complete explanation of that on slide 7 about the situation in regards to wider community contributors and how we've been measuring them so far. So far, we've been referring to wider community contributors, and in most of the cases, when we talk with numbers, we include people who submitted an MR, but there is and the number of them is like around 4,000, and the people whose MR has been merged is 2,500.
Awesome, thanks. I didn't get to slide 7, so I missed this. That's on me. Thanks for including that. I think it's really important, and I think maybe as GitLab we can just say, hey, whenever we say code contributors, we only mean merged stuff, and we're going to use the other number going forward.
Can I just thanks for that? I think I would like to spend just 2 minutes around this. And it's the spotlight around number 7. This is something that also came up with a conversation that we had Sid at some point over Slack about these numbers, and that made a conversation we had with community relations team about how do we find contributors. So far, when we're talking about wider community contributors, when talking about them, we're referring only to code contributors. But at GitLab, we receive contributions, different kind of contributions, like engagement, like translation, like people doing social support on forums. And currently, we don't, when we publicly talk about that, we don't include them in most of our cases. So what we did, we just changed the handbook reference about contributors, and we explicitly made it to code contributors. And we listed down all the contribution opportunities that we have right now at GitLab. And as of the next steps is like to try to figure out how we can measure some of them. I mean, we can easily measure responses on the forum, but we don't measure the impact that engagement activities these activities have, or we don't necessarily measure, you know, how community opening issues for us, or providing feedback for our products to help us how this advance our product. And also we corrected these numbers. We added a caveat about the number of code contributors, which so far was a really high number, and also provided a link to all the necessary metrics platform for, you know, seeing for everyone to see the numbers of people with merged requests or merged MRs or without merged MRs.
Cool. Yeah, I fully agree that like contributing is more than code. So the more data we have about that, the better. Move on to question 2. Slide 3 mostly has cumulative metrics, and we try to avoid this internally. Maybe someone can link the relevant handbook section, but it basically says, look, if you're talking internally, which a group conversation is, we look at non-cumulative metrics, because the cumulative metrics will always go up and to the right. So it doesn't tell us what's happening in the business.
Thanks for that feedback, Sid. That slide has been around for quite a while before I joined, so it may be a little bit of a legacy. And I do know that we use that slide in our external presentations to kind of give an overview of the size of our community and just broadly some of the work that we do. So maybe it's just not the best use of that slide in a group conversation. So we appreciate the feedback.
Thanks. Yeah, totally fine to use externally. Maybe for we can have like 4 key metrics that are actionable for the key review / group conversation.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks.
You also have number 4. Would you like to verbalize?
Yeah. There's a slide about the GitLab 14 rollout success, and it links to Hacker News. And the slide says GitLab 14 rollout success. I think it was a success. I also think there's things to learn. I'm kind of missing that from the slide. And the first 3 Hacker News comments are, what's happening to GitLab? The site is littered with charts and nonsense business marketing lingo. The second one is, take this with a grain of salt, but perhaps I'm not in a good headspace for reading this. The third one is, this feels like it was written by marketing for marketing. All these are kind of valid because this was kind of our business marketing, our kind of buyer-based marketing, not our marketing to end users, and that got picked up by Hacker News. So they were kind of reading the wrong blog post, and they kind of got a not so nice reception. That's fine. We don't live and die by what people say about us on Hacker News. But I think there's something we can maybe kind of learn from this. And I don't see any reflection of like, ooh, the business post hit Hacker News and it was pretty rough. And then what we can possibly learn is, if you look at the Node-RED blog post today, and disclosure, I'm an investor in Flowforce. But if you look at the Node-RED blog post that I linked, Nick does a nice kind of walkthrough of the release. I think it's a bit long at 8 minutes, but I do think that like a GitLab release is kind of a big monthly event. Maybe it's worthwhile to have 3 minutes by someone kind of talking excitedly about what's in that release, so that we have not just a very long list of features, but also kind of another media of communication. That's just a suggestion, but kind of the thing is like, how can we make sure that next time on Hacker News, the kind of end user facing thing trends?
Yeah, I can address that one. Thank you for pointing out the feedback there, Sid. I think the lens that we were kind of looking at the release, the lens we were using to look at the release on this slide was really like how our team kind of contributed to supporting that release, not exactly how the community interpreted the blog post. So apologies if that wasn't clear, and appreciate the suggestions, on how we can get the kind of end user focused stories in front of the right, in front of the end users. I know Michael and you had a discussion in Slack that became an issue around doing some more kind of end user focused marketing in conjunction with releases going forward. And I think William's working on something for 14.1. But our team will also look into how we can do a better job of supporting those releases, and we'll review this video that you shared in the notes here.
Yeah, and Sid, I'll add just a couple things. You're right. We had 2 audiences for the launch. We had a business audience, like you said, and we had the developer community, and we had 2 separate, messaging specific for them. And I think we did get it a little crossed. I think there are some learnings there. I did put a link in J, which is the metrics around the launch. I was going to cover this in the key meeting as well. So there's some really good some data beyond what the community team did. And then the second point in K is there is an issue where the team has been doing exactly what you said. Hey, what did we learn? What did we, what went well? What didn't go well? And I will find that issue. I just haven't found it this morning, but I've been reviewing it, and there's some really good thinking there and how we can do better. So thanks for the feedback.
Cool. Thanks, Craig. And this is heartwarming to see. Yeah, I think if we look at, hey, was something a success? We look at the metrics and what impact did it have, not how much time we spend on it. So this is great to see. Thank you.
Yeah, I will ask the community team if you can give some color on, beyond the couple notes on Hacker News, but what are you seeing in the community? What's been the general feedback on 14 in terms of the features, and what are they excited about? I'd love to hear the community team's perspective on that.
Does someone from the DE team want to take that one? Michael or?
I can take that one. I was just adding the issue, Craig, that you referenced, the retro issue. I just put it in there.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think, similar to kind of Sid, we rely a lot on like the Hacker News community to give us feedback on the release. And I think the discussion on Hacker News specific to this release was really who is the target audience for the blog post and kind of critiquing our marketing strategy more than talking about the release, which was unfortunate. I think in the community members that, are really active, I think we had a couple of folks participate in a community meetup, and it was a mix of team members and community members who shared their feedback on their favorite features, and those are mentioned kind of here. And I think the GitLab VS Code extension with the code review feature was one that I think a lot of people seemed excited about during that meetup. So that's probably one that I would highlight. But if Brendan and Michael wanted to jump in with anything else, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably the one I'd point out to, in a group conversation, because I think it shows an important choice that we made there to take that, that VS Code extension was originally a community contribution. It actually was a GitLab team member, but they were doing it on the side. And so taking that over, much like, taking over the runner from Camille, who donated or wrote this Go-based runner, I think can have an outsized impact, because this is somewhere that we've seen Microsoft pushing really hard for code, what they're doing with code spaces, and of course VS Code being open source but also Microsoft influenced. I had an interesting little post I put in the competitive channel the other day that I got what I thought was a recommendation from VS Code to install a Docker extension, but it was actually an Azure container thing. And like, I just trusted VS Code. It said, oh, here's a recommended extension. I clicked install and I had it before I even mentioned. So I think the more that we can, focus on that integration point being, just as good, if not better, that investment's well worth it. The other thing from the meetup that I thought was really interesting was something I was proud of was the pronouns being added to your GitLab profile. And that was pointed out by not a GitLab team member, right? So that shows how our values at GitLab, I think the more that we can incorporate those into the product, the more that the product resonates with people in a way that's different than other software they use. And so the fact that the community member pointed that out, I think is critical. Again, that was an idea that a former team member had floated out there. Another team member decided to take and do quickly. I pointed out that we ran numbers on that, and 600 people within 24 hours had added their pronouns to their GitLab.com profile. And so I think that's a really important change. And it's one that didn't come without controversy. There were folks that wanted to argue it was a bad idea, but it's good for us to kind of live our values and understand that. And I think the community appreciates that, even if they might disagree with the decision. We're living our values. That's key.
And I want to add to the Visual Studio Code extension. This is something I'm seeing myself, especially also with the integration into Gitpod and the blog post, which was published yesterday, makes it even more convenient. And you can use Visual Studio Code in the browser, integrated into GitLab and Gitpod, but also in your local IDE. And this is something which generates lots of impressions and good feedback. So some of the content marketing strategy focuses around that, of providing blog posts around Visual Studio Code with GitLab and something else. The other highlight I'm seeing, and this is like tied to my ops focus, the Terraform registry or the Terraform module registry got some highlights in 14.0, and also the Helm registry, which will be coming up on Thursday in 14.1. This is something which kind of completes the DevOps lifecycle. So you don't need to use any external registries or repository or whatever. And and generally speaking, the whole Terraform integration needs, I think, more push, because some people are not aware that they can use GitLab as a Terraform state backend, or just use the predefined CI/CD templates. Which brings me to the third point. I appreciate the huge investment into the CI/CD pipeline editor, because it makes it super easy to start with. The side pane provides you the steps. Hey, you're new to GitLab, to CI/CD. Here's a few tips and tricks. Here are predefined templates, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I know that there is a huge load of features coming with pipeline insights, metrics, monitoring, making it easier to get started with, so that people also explore merge trains, parent-child pipelines. So I think the unique way we are providing a new CI/CD pipeline editor, developing it in the open with feedback in small iterations, which follow our values, is really great. And I see lots of positive vibes and feedback around this topic. So this is something I wanted to share.
Thank you, Michael. Anything else on feedback for the 14 release features?
One thing we should consider next time we have like a marketing and a buyer focused marketing post, while there also is an end user focused post, we should link from them. So we're linking from the end user post to the marketing post, but not vice versa. So I think in the first kind of couple of paragraphs, it should say, hey, if you're an end user and on the more technical side, this post might be more relevant for you. I think we could have easily prevented the whole Hacker News debacle.
Thanks, Sid, for that point. I just had one more follow-up. We had a really great discussion on the team about this exact point, and our blog posts don't necessarily specify an audience, and so obviously our community reads things that's more intended for business, and thus the Hacker News suggestion. So one of our first iterations is on slide 9, which is to add community personas, which were not captured previously in the list of our marketing team's broader personas. And so that's our first step, is to really kind of define who our community is, and then work with the marketing team and the content team so that when posts do come out, we can start to consider a little bit more of the community audience and what those members are thinking and what their perspective is, as well as helping establish our outreach for some of our specific programs, like our open source program or education program, for example. All right, thank you. I think Sid, you have number 5.
Cool. Earlier in this call, I mentioned like, hey, we have some cumulative metrics, and the response was, oh, but these are like historic slides that we use externally as well. I also want to note that slide 26, 27, 32, and 33 all are cumulative. So it might be not just the legacy ones.
Yeah, and I had added, a note about that we had been specifically asked to include them in a group conversation in the past. So we're happy to remove it if it's not useful.
In internal conversations, we do not use cumulative metrics because they're not actionable. I don't have this handbook section ready, but I propose we stick to that. Thanks for the context, Maritzi. Helpful.
Sure.
That was the last question on the agenda, but we're definitely happy to answer any other questions. Would anyone else like to voice a question? Or if you're not able to access the doc, please feel free to put it in the chat.
I just want to say a really nice deck, really great metrics and great progress by the team. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to second that. If you look at how many things the team is working on, like they have more than one goal per person, that's a lot of load, and a lot of them are green, but I also love that some of them are red, and those are pretty ambitious things. So well done.
Anything else? All right, if that's it, we will we'll close out for today, but thank you for all the great questions. And you're more than welcome to follow up over in the community relations Slack channel as well. Thank you.